Let's talk about Dusty Rhodes for a minute, because I felt like you said something pretty important there when you said, well, I'd been here before when I first came to Jim Crockett and houses were down, but we saw, what proper leadership did. Dusty Rhodes was the guy with the book back then. Now you're leaving him in the WWF and you're back here in WCW. Talk to me a little bit about what you thought of the committee, or when you knew they were booking by committee. Had you heard that ahead of time? Who, in your opinion, really had, quote unquote, the book?
Well, I knew Rick had a lot of influence. Cornette, I think, was on that committee. I knew he was a smart guy. What other names? It was Hurd headed up, obviously. Hurd was the boss. Rick, Cornette. Who else was on the committee?
I mean, from what we hear, it's like Kevin Sullivan and Jim Cornette and maybe a Greg Gagne. And I mean, there's been lots of people by committee that just floated in and out, but the big ones that we would hear a lot were Ole Anderson, Jim Cornette, Ric Flair, Jim Hurd. Basically you had to be named Jim to get a spot at the table.
Well, let's just say it was, Cornette and Rick. If you would have let them sit down and write the show and then do what was written, I would have been felt very good about it. But the fact that you got Jim Hurd at the forefront and making the final call on stuff, being a pizza salesman does not put you in a position to be a genius in this business. Whoever said that they could transfer from that industry to our industry, must have been on some heavy duty drugs, because he didn't know anything about our business. And he would see the Steiners walk in and he would see Luger and Sting, and they all looked like $1 trillion. And there's my stars. Okay, well, great. If that's your stars, who do you want to angle them with? What programs you want to do with them, da, 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 da. And he would shoot stuff down. I would hear horror stories about, okay, they would be bringing up different talent. Oh, well, that guy looks terrible. Da, 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 da. He's not going to draw any money. Oh, that guy looks great, but he can't work. And then you would get Cornette and you would get Rick with the counterpoint. Well, yeah, he looks great, but you got to have somebody to work with him to make him look great. The guy's green, and all these stories are going back and forth. And the main thing was when you got leadership at the very top and they're coming up with ideas that they think is going to be brilliant, but have no wrestling background, that's where you're going to fail.
Yeah. We know that, the Hurd years were not always the best years, and we'll get into that another time. I did a quick little, Google search here, and it looks like the 1990, very early 1990 booking committee. So right when you're there or coming back, it's Jim Ross, Kevin Sullivan, Ric Flair, Terry Funk, and Jim Cornette. It's been written that Flair, Cornette, and Sullivan were in charge of the matches, and JR and Funk were, in charge of sort of the television production piece. So the committee is going to be something that's been tried several times throughout wrestling history. And lots of people have strong opinions about whether or not it needs to be one guy and whether or not that guy should be on TV, or should it be by committee? You're old school. What say you? Do you prefer a single source or a committee?
I'll tell you what say me. Hearing that list of names, knowing that Jim Hurd was such a screw up that he could throw a wrench in the attempted good works of those guys, as brilliant as they were in the business, he was shitty enough that he could screw up all their good intentions. Now that takes something.
Oh my gosh. Let's talk about
Kevin Sullivan, Terry Funk, Jim Ross, Ric Flair, and Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
And Jim Hurd was able to thwart all of that. Wow. That's a big turd in a smooth running machine without Jim Hurd there.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that you were so unhappy to this day you won't eat Pizza Hut.
No, Brooklyn Pizza.
Let's
couple of miles from the house.
Yeah, there
awesome.
you go. Let's